Welcome back. This is Microsoft Virtual Academy getting started with Template 10. We have talked about the blank template, but there's really quite a bit more to that, and really one of the appeals to Template 10 are the many other templates. There's 3 in all. Right now we're going to talk about the minimal template, not to be confused with the blank.
So it's not blank?
Not blank.
It's a little bit more?
It's just a little bit more.
Okay.
We should have called it a little bit more template.
Exactly,
so that's
but
what
that was
it is.
too long.
That's right. The minimal template ships with the extension as well, and you get it for free. So
it's one of the 3 that you have installed: blank, minimal, and hamburger.
And hamburger, that's right. Yep. Those are the 3 we have today. And yeah, there you go. That's the dialogue for it right there. And they all follow the same patterns. They all look the same, so you'll feel comfortable with moving between them. And they're all additive. So you could start with blank and build into minimal easily. It just gets you a long way quickly if you go straight to minimal. I start with blank most of the time.
You do?
Yep. And when I want something, I do minimal. I don't. The hamburger's nice, but it's not 100% time for me.
Sure.
All right. So take a look. I've got Visual Studio 2015, and I have Template 10 already installed, the extension. So when I say File, New Project, I get all 3 options. And here's minimal. And so I'll just accept it the way that it is and say Go. Just like when we create the blank or the hamburger template, it takes us directly to a help page dedicated to this, and it kind of walks us through how to get started. The easiest way to get everything going, there's 2 things. Up in the quick launch, if you look for the package manager, which all you have to do is type pacman, you can go to the package manager settings, right here, the first one, and make sure that you have this second checkbox checked. If it's unchecked, which I uncheck it often, if it's unchecked, then it won't pull in all of the references that are predefined in the project. If it
won't
is
pull in
checked,
all of the NuGet references.
All the NuGet references, right. Right, because this is the NuGet package manager. And so what is it we're talking about? We're really talking about this project JSON file that ships with each of the templates and brings in a handful of things we all kind of will rely on in a standard project. So, of course, the first one is just the UWP platform. We don't have to really talk about that one. But we also bring in the behaviors SDK, which now is also open source on GitHub, which is terrific. And so that pulls in off of NuGet. That's actually new. We just announced that it's on NuGet just a handful of months ago now. It also brings in Newtonsoft, which is just a standard JSON serializer that everybody should be using. And of course, Template 10 as well. And so it's really up to you what version of Template 10. Right now it's 1.1.4. You could change this yourself and say 1.1.star, and it brings in all of the patches as we release. So that's a good thing to do, or you just get a specific version. Yeah, so that's why the package manager is there. Why are these all red? Is because those haven't been brought in and synced up with the solution.
So the references can't be satisfied, is it?
That's right. So you can do one of 2 things. You can build it and refresh it, which is easy, or you could run it, and that also does it. So either way you want to do it. I'm going to run it because I want you to see what we get as far as UI. So that was the UI popping up for pulling in the NuGet package. But I want you to see what we get as far as UI with the minimal project. So it is a little bit more than just hello world, not a lot. All right, so what you get is this blue bar at the top is the our
header
control called the page header. That's right. And so if I have Jerky Nixon, oh, I love that. Love that autocorrect. All right, if I put this in Jerry Nixon and I hit submit, what I get immediately is navigation to the second page, which is we call the detail page on this, but you could call it anything. And it passes Jerry Nixon to it, and it just demonstrates how to pass a parameter and how to accept a parameter on the other side.
And so what we've got in place right now is a navigation style app that we've got the ability to navigate between 2 pages, pass parameters backwards and forwards. We also see our back button appears up in the shell, so we've got a lot of capability that's just appeared in this application over and above the hello world.
That's right. In fact, let me go back home here and show a few more out-of-the-box things that you kind of get for free. Let's just start with what's on the page. So there are defined in this page, you get right out of the box, the 3 visual states that we maintain. And so we call those 3 states, we've named them. These are just what, you could name them whatever you want. We name them narrow, normal, and wide. And you can see that we're currently in the normal visual state. This is just a simple text box that's being written, block that's being written to. And as I make it more narrow, it just switched to narrow visual state. And if I were to, let's see if I'm able to make it wide enough here. Hope I can. There. So now I'm wide enough. So it doesn't actually change any of the UI, but it gives you the placeholders so that you could set up those, and they're all boiled up to a custom style. And so, in fact, let me just stop at that for a second, because that's pretty complex, and show you in the file structure, you have a lot of empty folders. And that's because by convention, really it's convention we're trying to say. As a developer, where do you put these things? You should put them here, unless you have, and this is really the going philosophy, unless you have a reason to put them somewhere else. Don't feel like you have to put your models in the models folder. If you have a PCL or something like that, you're going to move them to. But if you don't have a reason,
portable class library.
Meaning a portable class library. Yeah, that's right. If you don't have another place to put them, then put them here. That's kind of where it goes, right? And this is where your converters.
This makes it easy, and other people can view your project and know exactly where they're going to find things.
That's right. It's a nice, simple, proven structure. That's all. Okay, but let's go back to these visual states that we were at for just a moment. And so let me open up the main page. You can see there's quite a few pages here. I want to kind of explain what those are. And in addition, so here we are, and you can actually see it says narrow visual state. Let me zoom in. It says narrow visual state right now. And if I were to change this to be wide, you can see it says normal visual state, because now we're wider. It's nice that those can apply in the designer.
It's the only real way you can get to the visual states within the designer that's in Visual Studio.
That's right.
If you move to Blend, then you can actually trigger all of the states in the UI.
That's right. That's 100% right. I'm glad you brought that up, that if I move into Blend, I can have all kinds of control. And so the visual states are defined right here in this block. And so you can see these are the adaptive visual state group. That's what we called it. Here's the one for narrow, and here's where it sets the text block text to narrow visual state. But more importantly, its min width is set from a static resource. And so from this point forward, all of our templates will use a reused style, and you can customize this to match whatever your application needs. And all of that pulls from the styles folder in this custom XAML. And so before I show you that custom XAML, I want to show you how it's added to the file, or added to your project, and it's in AppXAML. And so here's AppXAML. And so right here is the resource dictionary for styles custom XAML that's added for you automatically. And so if I were to open up custom, now you can see that we've defined those three widths right here, 0, 521, and then 1200. Those roughly match the first-party apps that come out of the box that Microsoft makes. That 520 and this 1200.
And there's designer resources that are available on MicrosoftDeveloper.com that go through a number of these different states and suggested sizes for categories of devices.
That's
and so
right.
on and so forth.
Not Microsoft Developer, design.windows.com. That's what you're headed for. And so these then are reused throughout, whether or not you use our controls or not. And if you do, then they're automatically applied through this style. But more importantly, I want you to see that these custom styles are not just a block of styles for you. I'm going to collapse this just so we can kind of see how there are three sections. One for the light theme, one for the dark theme, which is called default, and then one for high contrast for accessibility purposes. And so as you want to customize this, that's terrific. Come in and customize your application. Remember, there are three sections for light and dark. You may not support dark, so you could delete that if you want to. But for sure, don't delete the high contrast. Come in and modify that. And then you can go to high contrast on Windows, and you can see all the colors that you've implemented here push on through as well. So a lot of developers don't know how to create custom themes or how to modify existing themes. This is how you do it.
And so this gives you a good starting point. You know, we've called out some accent colors and so on and so forth as resources. Because again, a great practice is to consider creating some named resources that allow you to very simply modify a color throughout your entire application, rather than having local colors specified and so on.
So let me expand one and just kind of walk through it. So first at the top, because it's reused across every theme, we've set up what our default colors are going to be. So we have both, instead of using a custom color name, we're actually overriding the system accent color. And so by default, that comes in, whatever you've selected in your start menu is some color. And so we've just overridden that so that it's steel blue. And that's really nice, because that means our template 10 controls will show steel blue, but so will things like the toggle button. You know, that background color is already set to whatever the system accent color is. So this allows it to be together.
And that really speaks to one of the important things to understand about styling, about how closest definition wins.
That's right. That's right. Because the system defines it on the farthest away.
Yeah.
And if you don't redefine it, which we are here, it's a little bit closer. You could do this again in your page. And
yeah, you could actually go to a specific control, and if you wanted a specific control's system accent color to be orange, you could create a local style at that point.
Absolutely, that's 100% correct. Okay, so now let's look at how this is the dark theme. So let's look at how we've implemented the dark theme. Let's see here. So first we say that we're going to turn all of these colors into brushes, which is what we're going to need anyway. And so in this case, we have the system accent color brush, right? So that's basically just taking the system accent color and turning it into a brush. We do the same thing with contrast color. And then we do the same thing. We're setting up our extended splash, which we haven't talked about.
Conceptually, it's really easy to understand. You might have a pot of paint, which is a certain color, but if you're going to fill an area, you're going to use a brush. And so that's why we create brushes.
Well, that's a fascinating analogy. That's very good, actually. And then the page header. So if I could, I'm going to relaunch this application just so we can look at the UI while we're talking about it. And I want you to see that this page header along the top is blue with white background. And of course, that is handled right here. It's set up right here. So the background and foreground are set up. And then there's a resizer control also that is set up with a grabber.
And we'll talk about that control a lot more later.
That's right. We'll go into the details of it. But for now, here's the resizer control, and it allows you to change the size of a text box. It's pretty, or text box, yeah. It's pretty nice.
Yep.
But that color is also set up in this custom style as well. All right, so that's the custom style. And if we were to go back to the XAML of the page, you can see that the layout is, let me back up just a little so I can show you where it begins. So here's our custom control. So something you didn't see because we hadn't clicked into it yet is that the custom control has 3 buttons, or that the page header has 3 buttons to it. In fact, I shouldn't keep closing it. I should leave it open because I want to demo that. All right, so here we are again. And so how do you get to these these commands? They're over on the right. And
what sort of button is that, Jerry?
These on the right?
Yeah.
These are app bar buttons.
And you accessed it using the
ellipsis?
Ellipsis, good job. Oh, rather than the ellipse button.
Yeah, which would be a circle.
A squash circle.
Yeah, so right, so like where do these come from? They're defined right here in the page header, and you can add as many as you'd like or take these away. Each one of them, when you click them, is using a compile time binding to go into a method that's in our view model called go to something. And so in this case, I can go to settings, privacy, and about, and you can look at the implementation of that. It's ridiculously simple. But when I select it, it navigates us to the 3rd page that you get with this template, and that's the settings page. And this settings page actually is just kind of demonstrating capabilities of template 10. You would come in, probably delete most of them from your application or leave them. You know, it's kind of up to you. The first one shows that you can move this, this back button from the shell onto the page header. So that's pretty nifty. So now it's down here instead of up there. And I can switch it back up here. This is pretty nice. And then I can still navigate with it either way.
Yeah, and the reason for doing that is obviously you might have a design that prefers to have it in the page and so on and so forth.
Or you're using it on a type of device like maybe IoT that doesn't have shell as an option. That's right. And then you can see what it looks like when you switch between the different themes. Some of the nicest part of this is just seeing the code. Like if I did want to change the theme, what would I have to do to it? Of course, this implements that. And then this demonstrates another control that ships with template 10 called the modal dialog.
Modal dialog, yeah.
And it also demonstrates our timeout action and a lot of things actually.
Yeah.
And basically, it's a busy indicator, right? So that hides everything around it.
That fortunately does timeout.
Yeah. After 5 seconds, it turns itself off, right? Yes. So that's by design. Well, obviously,
that's for a demo.
It's the way it's implemented here. And then this is a pivot control, so I can go into our privacy policy if you have one. You can delete it if you don't, and obviously put your own code in there or text. And then an about that you might have. So you would go in. This is all driven by the AppX manifest. You can go into the packages tab and change all of this so it says so it has your application name instead of mine.
Absolutely.
It doesn't say Windows App 22 and it doesn't say Jerry.
And incidentally, if anybody wants to see how to customize the pivot control, you and I did a series of courses on MVA about XAML and how you can style a lot of these controls.
Called XAML for Windows 10.
XAML for Windows 10.
That's right. And there's 3 right now. Terrific. All right, so the 3 pages that I wanted you to really notice, or the main page, this one, that second page that you go where you can pass a variable, and then And then there's settings page as well. And these three all go to the same page. They just pre-select the tab or the pivot item that you're in. Good. There is a little bit more to look at, though, and I kind of want to pull that up. And so as you can see in the file structure, there's a view called busy. And so this is what defines that busy dialog. That's
the content that's going to be shown in there.
So if you wanted it to look a different way, you create this and edit it, or create two of them and swap them out depending on what you're using it for. And then the last is the splash. And so the extended splash screen is just a design pattern inside UWP apps, but it's complex to implement.
It is. I mean, there's a lot of metadata that you need to look at for positioning the logo and making it so it's a seamless transition between the static splash when your application is launched by the environment and into the interactive or extended splash.
That's right.
Once
and it's important because the platform will terminate your app if you take too long to render UI.
Yes.
So this is a way around that limitation. Anyway, not in template 10, it's not difficult. All you have to do is define an action that returns your splash screen. So in this case, all I'm doing is newing up my splash view and returning it to Splash Factory. This is this is an action that I'm returning. I think it's actually a func, not an action.
Yeah.
Func. And anyway, so that's an easy enough thing. All of initialize will execute, and then all of onStart async will execute and automatically show your splash screen in the meanwhile, and then transition over to whatever you navigate to. So this is all handled for you. It's a lot of lines of code to implement on your own, and you just kind of get it for free. There are two other things that ship in this template. The services set, or one service ships with it, the settings service. And one of the places we interact with that is right here at startup, where we set some of the default settings inside template 10. So you don't have to do it this way, but by default, whether or not to use the shell back button, remember we would switch between whether or not it's in the canvas or out on the shell. And this would allow to reset it at startup. We also have this idea of theme. Remember, we could switch between light and dark. And then we didn't mention this. This is the cache duration. One of the things you get for free is suspension management inside template 10. If you suspend your app and a certain amount of time passes, it doesn't make sense to resume back into that stale data.
Sure. Yeah, a concrete example would be, say, a news application where maybe you're viewing a particular article and then you went on vacation for 2 weeks and came around the news app again. You'd probably want to see the latest news as opposed to the cache news articles from 2 weeks ago.
That's right. So you might have several days for that maximum duration. Maybe you've had some sort of financial app and you have several minutes for that sort of duration. It's sort of up to you. Anyway, that's where that's set, and of course it's optional, but this is demonstrating how to do it. So we have our view models, one for each of the pages, right? Remember our settings, main, and details pages already set up just like we did with the blank projects. There are no models because this is a simple little thing where you're just passing a variable back and forth. But it's a great starting point, and if you were to look at the bulk of, let's say, 90% of all the apps that are out there, they probably would need these pieces in order to be a complete application.
It's a very solid boilerplate from which you would start.
You could submit this to this store.
Yes. And at this point, you're free to make any choice around how you want to manage the navigation within your application.
Yeah, that's right.
You haven't established a navigation paradigm, you've just established the infrastructure that supports it.
But you might want to, maybe using the hamburger menu, but we'll cover that in another session.
Sounds like foreshadowing.
Yes, foreshadowing indeed. Yes.
We'll be right back with hamburger.
Go try out the minimum template. It's pretty great.